I, the Demon King's faithful servant, will bask in his radiant power. Leave everything to your humble servant, Riev.
For our first Grand Hero battle of 2022, we have Riev. It appears Yen Fei hasn't stolen all the Grand Hero battle luck for himself because Riev is going to be another interesting pickup and a unit definitely worth at least a look over. Riev is another one of Grotto's generals from Sacred Stones. Bearing the Blood Beryl title, Riev is that typical scheming, creepy old dude pulling the strings behind the curtain and is faithful to the Demon King. A lot of the red Grand Hero battle mages in Fey happen to use dark magic, and Nintendo systems really like to stick to that theme. However, Riev is a bishop and uses light magic, so he escapes that cursed group to land in the blue mage infantry category. That said, he does not escape the Grand Hero battle red mage stat spread. Riev has 43 HP, 39 attack, 25 speed, 23 defense, and 40 resistance. 39 attack I believe is highest for the free-to-play blue mages, and 40 res ties for the second best as well. He will have speed, defense, and res super boons. Each of those can be interesting picks, especially with his weapon. We took a long break, but we finally have another gimmicky, unique tome for our Grand Hero Battle Mage. Maybe gimmicky isn't the right word though. Riev will have the Argent Aura, and this is a great tome for a free-to-play unit. It has 14 might and express specials, which is a solid effect. It's not super common on free-to-play tomes. For its main effect, every turn inflict -5 to all stats and the stall status on the slowest foe, plus you apply the same to all allies around them within 2 spaces. Riev also gets +6 attack and res when he's facing a foe at more than 75% HP. This is a great support weapon, and to be honest, it isn't super gimmicky to the point where it's ignorable. First off, stall is not exactly easy to get, and what stall does is that if the enemy or if the foe has extra movement from say armor march, stall will turn it into gravity and the foe can now only move 1 space. The biggest abuser of extra movement is probably legendary Sigurd, and he gets it from his special and he turns him into a 4 movement missile ready to kamikaze into the enemy team. If Sigurd procs his special, his entire team also gets +1 movement. Argent Aura is another tool you can use to fight legendary Sigurd. He is slow, so if Sigurd gets hit with this, he can no longer move 4 spaces. Instead, he can only move a measly 1 space. If Sigurd can't charge in, his team can't get the extra movement. Now, if the enemy tries to bait this out with a slower unit, Argent Aura still hits everyone within 2 spaces of the slowest foe, so they're going to actually have to be all alone. This AoE is important because there are other movement abusers like Yuri or Brave Alm who also get +1 movement all the time. Yuri shouldn't get hit directly by Argent Aura, but if he's near his slowest ally, then well, there goes his 3 movement. This is also going to apply to anyone with extra movement skills, for example Duo Ephraim or Paula, who both have +1 movement dual skills, and those can be used in modes like Summoner Duels. For slow extra movement units besides Sigurd, you got Fallen and Legendary Edelgard with Armored Stride. Brave 80 also is affected by this, but she can still warp around. Now, stall is not a hard counter to these units. If you can cleanse it, they get their extra movement back. That means Harsh Command Plus, Restore Staffs, or the even or odd recovery healer skills can negate stall. Additionally, if you move, then get danced, stall is going to be gone, which means stall does not completely stop Legendary Azura from giving her movement buff. Stall also does not stop Pathfinder or Warping from happening, and those are just as frequent as extra movement. While AoE Stall is great, it doesn't affect every unit. That's where the AoE -5 to all stat debuffs come into play. It's a pretty good complement to the AoE Stall, and unlike some gimmicky tomes, Argent Aura is going to activate every single turn. The slowest enemy is always going to get those debuffs, and everyone around them is affected too. One benefit of this is that Argent Aura probably tags all of those annoying near or far save units. Generally speaking, that's pretty good. But we did just get an Armored Winter Banner with Unity weapons who can turn those debuffs around. There's also Fallen Ike and Legendary Marth who will happily accept those -5 debuffs. Other safe armors may be using Slick Fighter, which negates stat debuffs. For example, Legendary Tiki got Slick Fighter and Far Save with her remix buffs. There's also the usual monster Brave Hector who just ignores debuffs thanks to his stupid refine. I may be focusing on counters to Argent Aura support abilities, but it also gives Riev some combat effects too. Faster specials and +6 attack and res is honestly not bad at all, considering the AoE debuffs and the soul effects already available. Riev can take advantage of his own -5 stat debuffs, so that's a fine weapon in ideal scenarios. I'm amazed that after the insane free-to-play value of Yen Fei and the Carnage Amatsu, we're getting an actually decent unique tome. Riev brings a lot of fun stuff, and while his debuffs may not always work out, he also gets in combat power for himself. Alright, we spent a bit of time on Argent Aura, but it's a really cool weapon. For the rest of Riev's base kit, he will get Glacies, which may be tough to charge, but Riev does Exoid specials, and he has that big fat 40 base res. He then has attack and res ideal 3. The tier 4 version is only from Ashura, so this is the only other way to get at least the tier 3 version. You can get plus 5 attack and res if you're at full health, or if you have a bonus active. There is no bonus stats for meeting both conditions. For his C skill, Riev's gonna bring Savage Blow, pretty much just a failure skill here, but that's 7 out of combat damage in an area effect after you initiate. So Riev has some decent skills. Argent Aura gives plus 6 attack and res ideal 3 grants plus 5. That's gonna be plus 11 attack and res on top of the 39 base attack and 40 base res. Not bad at all, and at least for Riev's first fight. If you lose HP, ideal 3 isn't gonna proc, so maybe bring some field burst if you're gonna keep it. Now, you also have to consider that Argent Aura inflicts -5 to all stats. If it lands on the majority of the enemy team, Riev's gonna get a little faster, he takes a little less damage, and he's gonna deal more too. If you want to improve Riev's lower speed and defense, this can help in your efforts. In terms of merging, Riev's Neutral Nature gives plus 1 HP, attack and res. That's fine for the most part, but he has 3 super boons in speed, defense, and resistance. Stacking more res can be nice, but more speed and defense could help if you want a generalist build. Like I said, you also have those -5 debuffs to all stats from Argent Aura, so Riev can definitely build toward those 2 super boons if you want. In terms of heroic grow infantry units or blue mages, Riev can be comparable to someone like Sias, whose War God Tome Refine also inflicts AoE debuffs for his team. Sias has to line up with enemies, but Riev has to hope the slowest foe is surrounding his enemies. For PvP, it's not uncommon, but for Argent Aura, it definitely loses value in PvE maps where reinforcements are just all over the place. If you instead want to focus on attack and res stats, Riev is kind of comparable to Oliver, who pretty much just only invests in attack and res with his Refine. There's also Sonya, but she has much higher defense if you want to fight some archers and dagger units. Brunia may be a more interesting pick as well, especially since she could get a Refine. Her from Bovator does counter Argent Aura's debuffs. Not an infantry blue mage, but Halloween Sophia has a similar stat spread to Riev, no unique tome though. For 3 to 4 star Sunnable units, Riev has the closer stat comparisons with Ileana and Tatiana. All 3 of them have high attack and res, but Riev's gonna get extra defense instead of focusing on speed. You could look at Ileana or Tatiana for build inspirations if you want more ideas. While Riev is a good bit slower, the -5 speed debuffs from his tome could help close that gap. Having Argent Aura really makes Riev a much more interesting unit. Thanks to Argent Aura always targeting the slowest enemy, Riev can literally sit in the back and do nothing while contributing to the team. Like Aversa, he offers some very nice debuff support when enemies are clumped together, which is quite common in arena or aether raids, and even in summoner duels. The common benefit will be those annoying -5 to all stat debuffs, and if you are dealing with extra movement units, then Stall will completely mess them up. For Riev's own combat, he does get accelerated specials and extra attack and res from Argent Aura. Combine that with attack and res ideal 3, and Riev is already over 50 resistance, and he could also fight a foe hit by his -5 attack debuff. If you don't want to invest too much in Riev, you can keep attack and res ideal and maybe try to find an attack boosting Sacred Seal. If you want to go and fight mages, then attack and res seals are fine, and for the beast slot, you can take something like dull ranged or vantage in case Riev and enemy both survive. Glacies is going to be on a 3 cooldown, but that's still a bit far off unless Riev or the foe can double. You can run quicker posts, but if you just want Riev to have an instant special, maybe you can swap over to a 2 cooldown Moonbow or Glimmer and then give him Quicken Pulse. It can be nice to one-shot a squisher enemy or finish off someone, since Argent already supplies your team with debuffs. Now, even though Argent Aura debuffs every stat, it depends on where the slowest enemy is standing. You may commonly hit most or every enemy, but if they're in a spread out formation, Riev may want to bring extra debuffing skills for more coverage. For example, he can take Sabotage Res from Solon, and if the enemy tries to split off from the slowest member, Sabotage Res can debuff the faster units who may be trying to avoid them. Same goes for Ploy's C skills or Sacred Seals, but you don't have to run extra debuffs if you don't want it. Riev has some high base res to proc Sabotage Employees, but if you don't expect him to fight often, then maybe something like Fury Stacking can be another option. The extra speed and defense may come in handy. Another option is to run a Breaker B skill. Maybe you can run Red Tome Breaker. It could be useful for certain red matchups. Let's elaborate more on support builds and skills. If you aren't depending on Riev to fight, he could run the Rally plus Ruse setup. The debuffs may overlap with Argent Aura, but you can catch out anyone not hit by the tome. You can also apply the guard status, and you can buff your team. For C skills and Sacred Seals, you have a ton of support options, just take what you need. joint drives, the new cross spur, tactics, distant guard stacking, or maybe you can go with chill speed to make sure the fastest enemy isn't getting too comfortable. I think an interesting B skill for Riev could be sudden panic. He could become like a Versa with mass debuffs and panic altogether, but Riev would probably need at least 1 HP increase in skill. If you don't mind, HP plus 5 is fine, but if you want some extra stats, then you gotta use the dual A skills. If you do stack HP, Infantry Pulse is available for cooldown reduction shenanigans. A cheap B skill could also be Link B skills. Very simple way to buff allies and Riev himself, plus you make some more room for other support skills. If you're going to go the support route, but you want a little bit of combat power, you can swap Quicken Pulse for Times Pulse. Admittedly, maybe not the best idea since the more powerful buffing skills are in the C slot, but Times Pulse will at least keep activating every single player phase if Riev does go into a fight. Now for those looking for a little more bloodshed, what can Riev utilize? Well, he can just go straight for res tanking if you want. You could run the usual Mirror Stance 3, low attack and res, and quicker post setups, but you can also run attack and res unity or close ward to fight dragons. Riev could also take advantage of Special Spiral. He's going to have a 2 cooldown iceberg, so once you get the first proc off, Special Spiral will continuously supply charged icebergs that are gonna hit hard. Times Pulse also is great, and since the Sacred Stone's Bishop has effectiveness against monsters, you can give him Ruptured Sky to simulate that. Riev can pre-charge Ruptured Sky, and he could maybe try to double tank your units by using No Follow-Up or Sturdy Impact. He could maybe get a second proc off. Speaking of doubles, if you want, you could go for a speed build. He's not going to be the fastest, but at least Argent Aura can possibly debuff someone with -5 speed. The same can be said for defense stacking builds. Like Nami, Riev has so much starting res that you could just focus on defense increasing skills. We have many defense-based Form, Bond, or Solo Sacred Seals. While potentially wasting some debuffs, Riev can also run something like Attack and Res Menace. You could think of it like extra insurance against foes who escape Argent Aura's range. All in all, Riev gets some decent flexibility for builds, and it's thanks to Argent Aura not fully only being a gimmicky debuffing tome. The extorted specials and the attack and res boost is appreciated for Riev's own personal combat. So should you 5-star Riev? For stats, he's not doing anything new or super crazy. He has high base attack and res for a blue mage, but his speed and defense take a hit. What helps him immediately stand out is Argent Aura. This tome provides AoE Stall and -5 debuffs to all stats. It targets the slowest foe, but it also spreads to anyone nearby. Stall as a status is still incredibly rare, and this is a free way to try it out. Stall is not going to affect every unit, but there are some key meta threats that abuse extra movement, like Legendary Sigurd or Yuri. If Argent Aura can tag them with Stall, they can only move one space. This is a great ability for a mode like Aether Raids or Summoner Duels, but keep in mind there are a ton of ways to get around it. For example, Dancers can refresh the unit, Healers have ways to cleanse status effects, and Pathfinder and Warping can still get units into attack range. You can also miss the important enemies because Argent Aura targets the slowest foe, and if the enemy team puts a super slow unit far from their team, then there goes all your important stall statuses. Regarding the -5 stat debuffs, these are generally good, but be aware of Unity or debuff neutralization. We just got some inheritable Unity weapons, and if you accidentally tag Fallen Ike, well, that's not going to end well. At least for a mode like Aether Raids, you can simply put Riev on one of your teams and see what you're up against. I do think it's worth it to have one 5-star copy of Riev in your barracks. The rarity of Stall is too good to pass up for anyone without Loki's new Refine, and Stall ploy was on one seasonal unit only. I think the fact that Argent Aura debuffs in an AoE and gives Riev some decent combative effects makes it not that gimmicky. It works every single turn, and at least it hits someone like a chill skill. Even if you don't need Stall, it debuffs all stats, and Riev could also be a great unit for debuff dependent teams. Argent Aura is almost like Gunther's remixed Chilling Seal 2, and these mass debuffs can be great for Gunther's Blizzard Tome, the Broadly Fan Dagger, or even the new Refine for Legendary Lucina. I'm extremely impressed with what they did with Riev. After Yenfei, I don't think most people probably thought we weren't going to get a decent Grand Hero battle unit so soon, and even if Riev isn't going to be killing people himself, he can very much manipulate the battle from the shadows. Argent Aura is a very neat weapon. It can counter current meta threats and has actually good secondary combat bonuses for Riev himself. I'm a little salty that they treated Riev this good and gave Orson the Bereft Lance in its disappointing state. I guess it was all part of the plan though. Regardless, that's all I got for this video. I don't personally care for Riev as a character that much, but I'm happy he didn't get shafted. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
He believes that thing is his wife? Aren't people amusing?